Welcome to episode 107.
Centering the Self.
Whew.
Join us as we discuss decentering men.
And the multi-dimensionality of centering ourselves.
Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Witchy Wit podcast, where we look at life through a witchy lens. I'm Kimberlyn.
I'm Leilani.
At Witchy Wit, we explore current events,
Ideas,
music and books,
and experiences in ways that recognize energy and life in everybody and everything.
We are both real witches.
And we bring two real perspectives through the lens of our different ages,
Races,
and backgrounds.
with a healthy skepticism for what we have been told is true. Our conversations are raw, candid, and vulnerable.
Join us as we cast a spell to uncover what we each know is true in our intuitive, witchy selves.
Welcome to episode 107.
Centering the self.
The self.
The self.
Yay. So
Yes.
This is going to be, I think, a pretty exciting episode. It's an exciting episode for me. So
Me too. I think it's one that's we haven't really talked about this very much. So I'm excited to have like a real time conversation with you about some stuff that's really been percolating. So.
Yeah, and bits and pieces of it have kind of figured in some of our other discussions, but I'm pretty excited. So, but before we do that, shall we just kind of check in and
That
see
sounds
where we've
great.
been?
Would you like to start?
For sure. I'm talking about today something that's been on my mind for a couple of months now, and I'm just really addressing it again. I have had spells where I've had really, really, really poor sleep hygiene, and by that I mean I know that for a woman my age, I should be getting between 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. You kind of looked up like,
wow.
Okay. Well, do you agree, disagree? What do you think?
Every night on the Camino, you went to bed after me and got up before me.
That's because I have poor sleep hygiene. Thank you for noticing. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm supposed to get between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. And I don't. I shoot for 7, and I rarely get it. I'm lucky if I get 6, and often I get less.
Okay.
And after our rest retreat, we had 2 nights. 2 nights I had really good sleep. 2 nights out of decades of of shit. And sometimes it's better and sometimes it's worse. So I thought about that yesterday, a couple of days ago. I've been thinking about it, and I said I really should do something about that. And that phrase does absolutely nothing for one's personal development, right?
Yeah.
So last night, and I have these structures in place. I have a timer that's supposed to go off at 11:11 p.m. That's it used to say, take care of yourself. You promised yourself this, etc. For a while there, it said "bed bitch," and basically, I just hit snooze. I just hit snooze, and then I think I kind of sat and yesterday, and I know I meditated, and I just talked to my higher self and said, so why? Let's interrogate the next time I want to hit snooze. Let me ask myself what's so important that it's more important than my sleep. So last night that happened a couple of times. And at the time there was something, I needed to finish this, I needed to finish that. But I actually got to bed at 12:15, which is not super good, but it's better than 2, which is when I have been getting to bed. So I'm right now, and this is, I think, going to figure into some of our discussion today. I've kind of set myself the task of not, you will be in bed by this time, but when I'm not going to bed at that time, asking myself why. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah, and sometimes the answer, I'm sure, will make sense, because it's a spectrum. Sometimes it won't, but at least by doing that one little thing, I'm hoping to become a lot more self-aware, a lot more intentional, and maybe fucking getting some halfway decent sleep. So that's where I am.
Wow.
What about you?
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for the wow. Appreciate that.
Wow.
This is, and I'm talking to someone who is very militant about getting good
listening
sleep.
to you talk about sleep is stressing me out. And I'm not even the one. It has nothing to do with me, but I'm like,
Well, yeah, I would. Well, do you mind sharing a little bit about? Because I would, if there's anything that you can think of that would be helpful for me to. It's like so outside your ken, right?
Yeah, like I'm having a visceral reaction. Like one time I went on a trip with a friend up to Dallas to stay with another friend. It was 3 women, this woman and I, and we drove up to Dallas and we stayed with this other woman that we're friends with in the acro scene. And we got there relatively late. I don't know. I'm just going to say like 8 or 9 p.m. And then we sat in the living room and we were talking. And at about 10 p.m. I noticed that they were like talking. They were going to keep talking.
They hit their stride. Yeah.
So I didn't say anything. I just stood up, went to the bathroom, brushed my teeth, washed my face, looked back in the living room, saw that they were still talking, and went to bed. And the next morning, my friend was like, "I thought it was really great how you like just took care of yourself and went to bed." And I was like,
"Yay!"
I was like, "Yeah."
Yes.
It's not going to be held hostage in the living room
to your conversation.
To someone else's conversation when I want to be sleeping.
Yeah, you are so okay. I think maybe I'm just going to I have a picture of you from various things. Maybe I'll just put a little picture of you for my reminder or something.
Like you're taking pictures of me while I sleep on the Camino.
That would be so lovely. That would be just a model of what it looks like to make good choices, good sleep choices.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It feels a little more like desperation on my part, but
like
because I'm like, oh my gosh, sometimes that's all I have is my sleep.
It's your sleep.
Like
that's all a lot of us have sometimes when we're going through stress. So thank you for putting it that way. That's a good way of thinking about it. Like I may not have control over anything else, but I can get my fat happy ass to bed.
Thank you. Yes, yes.
Thank you. See, that's what we do for each other.
That's right.
Insights. Or as my cousin says, growth.
Oh.
Yeah. So anyway,
okay.
So that's my check-in. What about you? What's been going on with you?
So I have recently had kind of like a illumination of a realization of like a fish doesn't know that it's in water sort of feeling. I've had this fish in water sort of realization about our circle and about the community from the circle. So, and I think that I started attending our circle in about 2005.
That sounds right.
I think, I don't know, I haven't been able to figure out the year or the month, but I know 2005. And so that's been a while. My gosh.
Almost 20 years.
Wow. I just realized that. Because it's 2025 and that's the same number at the end, which means that it's a nice round number.
Because we're smart like that. That's how, we have degrees.
Right. That's how math works in my head. That's the same in number. So we're going on 20 years or around 20 years. And what I'm noticing is that this water that I've been swimming in has inadvertently really shaped me in ways that I was not expecting. So of course I went in thinking, it's like really shaped my witchiness. Yes. Of course. And there's just some ways that it's really shaped me that I feel like I walk in the world in distinct ways that are directly connected to my experiences in our circle. And I had no idea that that's something that would have happened. If you would have asked me 20 years ago when I started, I would have told you, oh yeah, like it's going to make me more confident and it's going to make me a fuller witch. And like, I'm going to have more knowledge about the directions and like, I'm going to know how to raise energy, like witchy things. But what I didn't realize is that it would infuse so much of me in ways that I had no idea. And now I have these moments where I am walking as who I am, and I don't even realize that it's pretty counter to the overculture.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And I don't want to say that I took it for granted, but I did not understand the impact that it would have on me. And I am so grateful that 20 years ago, I met a woman in the food court at the mall to talk about the circle. Like,
oh my gosh,
you know, like,
wow.
That, and I'm so grateful that I started attending, because it's like a tree. You know, they say, like, you don't plant the tree because you want it now. You plant the tree for how it's going to be decades from now, right? For your children, which also I have interesting thoughts about. But like, and I feel like it's like that. It's like a tree. And 20 years ago, I planted it, and like only now I'm really like, I had these moments where I'm like, whoa.
This is what's happened because of that.
Yes.
That decision you made 20 years ago. Yeah. Would you say that you've just recognized it because you're swimming in it? Would you say that people around you have noticed this too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely, I think a lot of time people don't know what to do with me.
Okay.
And I oftentimes, I get categorized as evangelical Christian or Mormon because of the way that I present, because I'm a white woman and I'm vivacious. And so I think like people who don't really know me well but interact with me on a surface level tend to categorize me that way. Then they know me a little bit more, and then they categorize me as a tree hugger. But which is not wrong, you know, and that's just because of my vivaciousness, and I think. But I think that if people do get to know me, for example, I was at a meeting with with a certain department that I work in, and it's all women that were there, and we were talking about being at an event, and we were going to have a table, and they were asking for somebody to be at that table. And then I didn't even think about it, but I said, well, we have such and such, and then I can go woman the table. And it was like this inaudible record scratch. And it didn't even occur to me that I said that. Like I wasn't even like, I'll woman the table. You know, like I just said it. But like we're a room full of people that identify as women, like
Yeah.
like, well, I don't, like, it wasn't even that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But, like, I could see the entire, it shocked me, and then I was like, what did I say? And then I went back and looked at what I just said, and then figured it out. Like, that's how not aware of it I was. And that's, like, a very small example.
But, yeah. But it's a bunch of small examples that is your witchiness, right? And that's I'm it's so interesting to hear that you're kind of outside yourself enough to see that, because you know you're living it, right? And which is a good thing. Yay.
And I just want to say you were a big part of that.
Oh, thank you.
You were there.
Oh yeah, yes, I was a part of the women who were around the women who helped you to woman things. You were there when I first started attending. Yes.
And then you were there whenever I was seeking more leadership. And you were there when I was training. And you were there when I first started priestessing. And you were there now that I am priestessing along with you.
Yes.
And you were there on the Camino. And you were there for our other priestessing training, like all the way across the United States.
Yes,
like, you've really been there.
Thank you. Well, it's been an honor, a distinct honor and pleasure to be a part of your water.
Yes.
Yay.
Yeah. How elemental.
How elemental, indeed. So, shall we move into today's?
Yeah, and I think that actually like has ties to my check-in, and that part of it I think is that this is another part of my realization that as part of our circle, I was learning about centering myself in ways that felt very counter to what the overculture was saying. For sure. So today, I asked you if we could talk about. So originally, can I tell the story of how originally it started?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Okay, so originally it started with me because I love TikTok. The side of TikTok that I'm on, there's a lot of people talking about decentering men, and so I really started thinking about decentering men in my life. Which doesn't mean there cannot be men in my life. It just means that I'm not centering them. And then I started talking to you about it, and you really blew my mind. And you were like, well, what I remember is you were like, well, if you're decentering men, then that really means you're centering yourself. And I was like, well, shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, let's talk a little bit about it. First, I'm just going to,
Sure.
because this came from, like you said, this decision, things that you were kind of articulating in our conversation. But let's just talk a little bit, to kind of bring people up to speed. Probably a lot of people know this already, but it just helps to lay a foundation. So the idea of decentering men is basically shifting from this mindset where my value as a woman is tied to the men in my life, to my relationship status, or to how men see me, and moving from that to a condition, I don't know if that's the word, mindset, where I'm centering my values, centering my well-being. I create my validation, not my relationship with men. So that's the basic idea. And I just want to say, I want to start with this because there's a tendency when you move someone from your central focus, that everything is, centers around them and circles around them. The dominant culture wants us to, will see that as, oh, you hate them. Mm-hmm. It's kind of this false binary where you're either totally on top of something and in it and swimming in it, or you hate it. Mm-hmm. And it's not that. It's a spectrum. To me, what we're doing is we're taking them out of our focus, moving them off to the side, and then exploring what's there when they are not the focus. Mm-hmm. Okay? And so I think part of the problem is that it's running counter to the dominant culture. Yes. So maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the thinking, why this has been a big thing on TikTok and Reddit and there's books. There's actually a book called Decentering Men. What? You didn't know that?
No.
Okay. Well, we'll have to. In my exploration, in preparation for our outline, I found this book. Yeah, it was a book. I think she wrote an article and then a book. So maybe that's where the term. Or I don't know where the term came up.
Man.
Where
well, that sounds like
but there's a book that's out there.
Okay, yeah. I know nothing about it, but I'm intrigued.
Yeah. So what's the thinking behind decentering men?
So one of the main things in my exploration of decentering men is that it is challenging a patriarchal structure that I live in, that is so ingrained into the structure of my life, my gender identity, my the way we work, the way we live, the way our houses are set up, the way our families tend to be set up.
Wow.
And it's so embedded in there that it's, again, not to beat a dead horse, but like it's like the water that we're swimming in. So it's so much the water that I'm swimming in that, like, even now as I'm working through it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that it's right there too. You know, like even down to like maternity leave, but no paternity leave, or the way that we live in houses that are set up like we're supposed to like have one person stay home and then, but like, like even just the way that we have our culture set up and it's just so woven in there that I don't even realize it. And so then as soon as I was on TikTok and I started thinking about the centering of men and then decentering men, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is showing up in so many places for me.
Yeah. So it seems like one of the things that the first thing that one confronts, or I will confront, reference the first thing that I would confront when I decenter men is what then this whole structure is built on that. So what kind of structures do we have left when we've taken that out of the focus? When we've taken them out of the center, does the whole system collapse in, or what? And so kind of like we've been talking about the wheel. Remember, do we step outside? How do we step outside the structure? Or ideally, how does the structure change to recognize that there are two people there, or whatever, more people there? But if that's not the case, then what happens when one steps out of the structure, right?
Yes, and I think that's actually one of the reasons that I started down this journey was we did an episode on being child free, and in that episode I shared that sometimes I feel a sense of loneliness or a sense of not being seen as a woman because I'm currently not married and I do not have children, and to take it a step further, I was thinking, okay, so why do I feel so lonely? Well, our culture does recognize big occasions in women's life, but it always revolves around a man. I'm marrying a man and I'm having a man's kids. And of course, now there's more, now our society is beginning to recognize that there's more complexity than that. And traditionally, it's been those things: baby showers, wedding showers, a wedding, and then
the girl party, the
bachelorette party, right? It's and all these things,
and the most important day of your life,
right? This is her special day.
Yeah, her special. The only.
I have lots of problems with that. Yeah. So then it started me thinking about like, okay, so like I feel lonely. Okay, it's because what I realized is I was stepping off of that. I was stepping out of that system. And when I step out of the system, I'm also stepping out of the acknowledgement and the reinforcement that the system gives me. So then I was like, then I was like, okay, so what is the system? Well, the system is the centering of men, this patriarchal system. Oh, okay. Well, where else is it? And then, like, now I'm just going bananas because I'm, like, seeing it everywhere.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. Well, I mean, like you said, it's everything. So everything is, so this is the foundation of everything. And so I was joking about, if you take them out of the center, does everything collapse? But this system does not function the way it, without that linchpin in it, the way it stands. So until it's rethought, revisited, revised, edited, and rebuilt, this might be one of those instances where we kind of, like, we joke about kicking the table, and kicking the structure down, bringing in the wrecking ball, knocking it all down, and then rebuilding it. What does our society look like when that happens? Well, first of all, some people will be kicking and screaming before that happens, but, that's neither here nor there. So yeah, go on a little bit more. And, I think we were talking about this idea that of women, so many of the important events in our lives surround our relationship with men. And what does that mean on the ground? I mean, like, so we have this relationship. What does that mean for us as women? What does it mean for men? And, would you care to continue?
Yeah, I think, so one of the things that I think that what it means for us is that it bucks the system that life is meant to be lived in this very specific way. And I think that it really starts rocking the boat, and no wonder it makes certain people uncomfortable, because it really calls into question this somewhat flimsy but very regimented structure that we're supposed to be living in. But then we have queer folks, non-binary folks.
We're changing the narrative.
And then even people like us who are single women living on our own. When I think about the fact that I may or may not be, but I think I might be the first woman in my family to ever own my own home by myself.
Wow.
Like,
yeah. Yes. So, okay, let's take a step back and talk a little bit about, so we have this structure, and as we said, we talk a little bit about how it affects us as women. Perhaps you'd care to share a little bit about why it's such a good structure for men.
Thank you. Yes, I do think that. So marriage is a patriarchal structure, and it originated as. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say marriage in our society.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It has roots in patriarchal structure and has roots in as a property transfer from one man to another man.
From our dad to our husband.
Oh, yes, okay. Right? So I would go
for some goats.
Right. So I would go from my dad's house to my husband's house, and then he would give some goats, and then, now I'm that guy's problem. So... So, like...
Your dad's saying, like, going...
Right. Sure.
Got Leilani out of the house.
Thank goodness. So, like, I just find that I'm skeptical of the institution of marriage in general. I'm not saying that I'm against it. I imagine that I will likely get married again. I imagine that will probably happen. And
good for you.
And I'm very skeptical of the institution of marriage. And for me, it seems like the concept of an equitable marriage, specifically between a man and a woman, has the deck stacked against them. Because every single thing ends up being an active resistance against the patriarchal norms that which the institution of marriage has created.
Exactly. And it's founded upon. And
yes.
reflects, built and reflects. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's this woman that I work with that I really like. And every time I see her, she looks at my hand and asks me if I'm engaged yet.
Are you fucking kidding
No.
me? And you still speak to her.
And I like her. She's very nice. And we work together and I really enjoy our conversations. And she's just very, I think it perplexes her that my partner and I we just yesterday celebrated our 7-year anniversary, which was very fun. But I think it boggles her mind that I would be with someone, especially a man, and not be married after 7 years. Like, what's wrong? And for me, I'm like, the institution of marriage kind of makes me wary. And I think that, but I don't say that to her. But then she asks me, every time she sees me, she looks at my hand and asks me. And again, to go back to my check-in, the water that I'm swimming in, I didn't even realize I said this until afterwards. And I was like, I don't know if that was the best choice. But she asked me, and I said, well, really, my engagement status is probably one of the least interesting aspects of my life right now that I'm focusing on because there's just so many other awesome things. And she looked at me like I had worms crawling on my ears.
Okay, thank you for that image. Okay, now I'm looking at you. Okay.
Like worms coming out.
Okay, that's kind of, oh my gosh. I need a moment. Yeah, no, I get that. But, so what are some of, I would assume it's like emotional support. Like, why is marriage such a good thing in the patriarchal society? Like, what, what are some of the things?
In patriarchal society?
Yeah, so...
I love data. So, I'm going to say that I've consumed a lot of information around the statistics around this, and and I'm not a statistician, and this is not my field of research or whatever. And I think that overall what I see is that men who are married tend to live longer.
Oh yeah, no, there's studies.
Lots of studies. And I think that's fairly, that's not really debated. It's men who are married live longer. And I even have one that was from this Harvard study that said that of 127,545 American adults, they found that married men had a 40% lower death rate than unmarried men, even after accounting for cardiovascular risk factors. On the flip side to that, whenever I looked up the statistics, really people can find both examples that women in marriage live longer or women in marriage live less long, depending on how you slice it. But I think that really serves as the point that shows that really women are extending the life of men, and it is and either way, whether we engage in it or not, men are benefiting from this system. And when I look at the data, when I tend to look at what I think makes more sense, it looks like women live shorter lives when they're married. But you could really slice it both ways. But I think ultimately it can't be argued anything else except that we are extending men's lives either at the expense of or not the benefit of our own, which is a problem.
Yeah. Well, apparently not for other...
well, not for men.
People, but...
Men are sweet.
Yeah. I always knew that, but now it's good to see the statistics. Yeah. But I think, I think I'm actually surprised now that there are these studies because about 20 or 30 years ago, there were very few studies about women, because no one cared.
Right. Which is the problem.
Which is a part of this issue. Yeah. So, the fact that there are studies now, even though the results are inconclusive, or they depending on the study, they may not necessarily agree with each other, I think is very much a problem. Very problematic.
Depending on the study and depending who's funding the study, because I think that there are a lot of people out there, there are a lot of institutions that would really like to show certain things and saying that, oh no, it's better for women to be married. It's better, but whatever. So then I have this other, there's this book, This American Ex-Wife, How I Ended My Marriage and Started My Life. So it's by Liz Lenz. And it says, in her view, marriage limits women but favors men. She cites statistics to support her concerns. This is a quote. These days, nearly 70% of divorces are initiated by women who are tired, fed up, exhausted, no longer in love. Women who are unhappy. So I find it really... 70% of divorces are initiated by women.
Wow.
Tell me an institution is not working without telling me that an institution is not working. And so to me, of course, men would be happy if this institution is making their life longer. You know, I also read statistics about how married women are wealthier. I'm sorry, married men are wealthier because women are doing unpaid labor to prop up them making money. And then when the divorce happens, they take the money. And like all this stuff about like women wanting to be trad wives that I see on social media. And then there's a trad wife to poor ex-wife pipeline that happens where then their husband leaves them and they don't have a job, they don't have education, they don't have work experience, but they do have a bunch of kids.
Oh yeah.
You know, like it's just it's a system that is built to prop these men up, and then we are sacrificed on the altar of that.
I'm just going to hop in because I remember when I first started grad school, no, not grad school, but when I first started on my PhD, we were studying all these old musicologists and you how prolific they were. And I remember there was this huge influx of Germans immediately before, German Jews mainly, but immediately before World War II and then after, to the United States. And, you know, Harvard, they were invested at Harvard, Clinton, all of the, you know, major institutions. And they were churning out research like you wouldn't believe.
Wow.
And one of my colleagues said, well, yeah, because, you know, that's all they had to do. They went to work, they taught their classes, they came home, they thought, their wives, this is back with typewriters, their wives typed up their notes, their wives typed up their manuscript, or grad students or whatever, but they could do that. Whereas women who were in doctoral programs or whatever, they, you know, first of all, the big thing is they stopping the clock, they call that, when you have a child. So you stop the tenure clock. So you know, if you're lucky, they stop the tenure clock, because for those 2 or 3 years where you're totally unproductive, nothing's coming out. So at least then you can pick up again. But the idea that a woman could just go teach her classes, come home and think, and that there would be someone, you know, taking care of all of this stuff, you know, cooking and cleaning, taking care of the kids, then on top of that, typing up your notes. It just boggles them. I mean, like, people just laughed when someone mentioned that, you know, like the idea, what would happen if, because we were saying, why were there no women musicologists? They couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. So, and let's say they chose not to get married, so that they didn't have the pressures of supporting a husband emotionally or whatever, or, you know, with their labor or taking care of their children. They still didn't have those mechanisms in place to support them as they went through their careers, right? So when you mention this makes so much sense, and it just brings back a conversation I had, you know, 30 years ago. You know?
And this is even just scratching the surface on heteronormative marriages and life situations. And so I found this really interesting study that I want to link to. It's called Happiness and Sexual Minority Status. And it's from PubMed Central. And if you want to Google it, it's free. It's PMC for PubMed Central, PMC 5679422. But it had it even broken down to people who are in same-sex relationships, people who are in opposite-sex relationships, people who were same-sex and then switched to opposite sex, or back and forth, or people who are opposite sex, same sex. And it even broke down. And I just think that it rated their happiness, their sexual satisfaction. And I just thought that was really interesting. Unfortunately, I think we're really only now scratching the surface on what it means to dissenter men. And unfortunately, that means that we're there. So far, most of the research has been focused on heteronormative relationships. And even like looking at this study, we're starting to see more of an exploration of that. hopping off of the wheel.
Yeah. And I'll just make a note that I will put this in the show notes too,
okay,
so people can just can find that information. But yeah, I can't remember in my explorations, just following this topic, the idea that we have a little bit of we have some examples of this with people because of stepping outside of the kind of the gender binary, and so just making that one little change also makes, I would imagine, would make that person very, very aware and able to see the water, able to see the structure, because all of a sudden, I would imagine 99% of it does not support them, right? So as more and more people are becoming aware of this, I think we might start. Well, not now. We won't see any studies because there's absolutely no funding for no federal research money.
Yeah.
But let's not go there right now.
Nope.
So yeah, but we'll start to see more people exploring these ideas.
So you blew my mind whenever, because I was talking about decentering men, and you told me, okay, so if you decenter men, then what's in the center? And you helped me see that it's the self. That decentering men is really about centering myself. And the thing that I find that I come up against is, well, that's selfish.
Woo!
That's so selfish.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Do you have thoughts about that?
I'm so glad you asked. Yeah. Well, so here's the thing. First of all, we are the center of our universes. And I mean, no matter how you look at it, everything in my life revolves around me. Now, I may open up my circle to include other people, and then they, have varying degrees of importance, etc. But ultimately, the only person in my life whose trajectory I can influence or really reflect upon, because I'm not in anybody else's head, is my own. And so I would imagine that just in terms of genetics, we are kind of, genetically bound to being in our own heads, etc. And then of course we have modifications that are made so that we can survive in the world, right? And part of that are some of the decisions we've made, choices that we've made to be a part of tribes, etc. So just for our well-being and health and being able to bring down the mastodon or whatever. So having said that, though, it just seems to me that because of physical pressures, early peoples made choices for survival, and in a dramatically different scenario. And that as we grew, our brains grew, our decision-making abilities grew, our skills grew, we still held on to a number of traits that were useful and may not necessarily be as useful today, right? So perhaps as a childbearing woman who was going to be bearing children every year because that's the you have sex because it's fun, and you get pregnant because that's the next step. So because of that, then I'm going to need a strong man in my life to fight off the saber-toothed tiger while I run with my kids, right? Okay, so I get that, and I haven't seen a saber-toothed tiger lately. I don't know about you.
No.
So these kind of lizard brain adaptations are really adaptations that we made to our lives then. Our lives have grown and have expanded and have become so much more. We have so many more opportunities available to us as individuals, as physical bodies, as spiritual beings, that and we're not taking any advantage of any. Let me take a step back. As a society, we're actively being discouraged against taking any advantage of all of those wonderful opportunities. That's okay. I'm off my soapbox now.
I like your soapbox.
Thank you. Let's all watch the Matrix films again. But anyway, so I would suggest that the time is right for us to sit there and say, yeah, this worked for us, 5 millennia ago. Is it really the best utilization of our spiritual beings now?
Yeah, and I would argue no.
Thank you. Short answer. And now let's hear.
Short answer, no. And I would say that it's like such a thin veneer that if I just scratch the surface, is it selfish for me to center myself? Ooh, that feels selfish. Why? Well, I should be helping others. Who would I be helping if I was in a heteronormative relationship? Well, I should be putting him first, and I should, like, it's a very thin veneer that when I scratch it, I see why that there's a narrative that I should not be selfish. It's selfish not to have kids. It's selfish for me not to be married. I must be so lonely. Like all these narratives that push more or less obviously into this track of what my life is supposed to be. Really, it's just pushing me into the service of men. And when I take myself out of that and I center myself, then I'm fulfilling my own needs, my own desires, my own life. And I think that people are genuinely curious because my life looks so different from theirs. Well, what do I do with my time?
Okay, we're going to come back to that question.
Sure.
But I'm going to argue something, that you were saying, and again, this really resonates from our last episode on the Enneagram too.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Right? Putting someone else first, which is what we are encouraged to do. When you center someone, you are putting them before you. I would argue that a healthy relationship is one in which there's give and take. There's going to be certain times where, okay, the man has to fight off the saber-toothed tiger. I really want to run, but I've got to make sure he has the sword or
the pointy stick.
The pointy stick. I've got to make sure he has the pointy stick first so that he can do his job before I can run off. So it's a give and take. There's no one thing at the center. It moves. It's kind of like the little bubble in the tube of water. It moves to various places depending on need. It should be give and take. There should never be a time when someone is always constantly centered, except for a few special occasions like, a baby shower, or okay, she's having a baby. Maybe I won't go hang out with the boys. Maybe I'll be there so she can hold my hand and cuss at me, right? But for the most part, that's the center, and so I'm going to suggest that even in a place where people choose to step into something that has been divined a certain way, that there are ways maybe of working within it. Just that's a possibility. But the point I'm just trying to make is that it's that centering, it's that putting that person first constantly that I have the problem with. And that's the way our system is constructed.
Yes. Okay. And I want to go back to another piece that we said on a previous episode about rest. It is our innate worth. Just because I have worth.
Yes.
And it's not, because I think it's easy, and I think this might be because of the Enneagram 2 in me, and I think it also is reinforced by our culture, but I find that I have to take care of myself so I can take care of others, yes. And I actually have to take care, I don't have to take care of myself. I choose to take care of myself because I deserve to be taken care of.
Exactly. Not putting your mask on so you can help somebody else put on their mask.
So, if I put my mask on so that I can put on the mask of somebody else, is that I'm overlooking the fact that I deserve to have a mask on.
When the plane goes down, I deserve to have oxygen.
I deserve to have oxygen. So does every other person.
Yes. But I am the one with the oxygen mask in front of me.
Yes.
And I'm in my body. It's my lungs.
Yes.
So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And my favorite poem is To Be of Use by Marge Piercy. And part of being an Enneagram 2, I love that I take good care of myself. I love that I go to the gym almost every day of the week. I love that I have a rich, vibrant community of friends. And I love that fills me up so that when I go to work and I work with at-risk youth, I have so much that I can offer them. When I was coming home to a dysfunctional household where I was not only not centered in my own life, but I was totally uncentered in the relationship. I was going to work on an empty tank. I love what I do. And I love working with those kids, and that is not the sole purpose of my life.
Exactly.
The sole purpose of my life is my life.
Exactly.
And I love going there and doing my work. But I also love being a part of a circle and doing other things that fill me.
So we're coming back to the answer. That what do you do if you're not centering this?
Right.
So it sounds like I heard a couple of things. Maybe if you can kind of say, maybe hit on that a little bit more.
Yes. So, again, it's the water of my life. So I'm swimming in it. So I find it sometimes confusing whenever I am out doing things, and then my existence confuses people. So, dance is a big part of my life. I go to dance competitions. I go to dance practices. I travel for dance competitions where I stay with friends and I spend the entire weekend in a hotel ballroom away from my partner.
I was going to say, so what's Ben doing? That's the question. Yeah.
He is living his own great life. But I am living mine. And people are confused. And you're going to dance alone? Does he know that you're here? Is he okay with that? Well, he better be, because I'm here.
Because you're doing it, yeah.
And over spring break, I danced in Austin and I danced in Houston. I was in other cities without him. I traveled for a week without him. Because I have a life, and I'm a grown-up, and I have my own paycheck, and I have my own mortgage. But just showing up in my own life seems to confuse some people. But it's the way that I live my life. I don't feel like I'm being revolutionary, but it seems to really confuse people. The same thing with our circle. I'm a part of our circle, and it's a big part of my life. And I shared at the beginning how important it is for me. But he's not invited.
Because it's women only.
Because it's women only.
Yeah.
And he's very interested. Normally, partially due to grounding and partially because I've just had my phone off for a few hours, I call him on the way home and he asks me how it is, and I tell him that helps me to remember that there are speed bumps, so I slow down. Because you know those speed bumps on that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I have hit those going really fast. Because I don't see them.
Yeah.
Because I'm in trance brain.
Yeah. We let you go a little early.
So, right.
Friends don't let friends. The witches don't let witches drive trance
out.
Yeah.
But these, I have these things in my life that don't revolve around kids and don't revolve around my partner. But I do have parts of my life that are where I do find deep connection. Some with him, some not.
Yeah.
What about you?
So I think a lot of this for me. First of all, let me just say this: I probably go a little bit further with this than maybe what you might read on TikTok. So I tend to think of this idea of centering myself as really just examining my interactions with external markers of identity, validity. So, all of these things that say I am a woman, or I am a what, or I am a this, or I am a that. I find myself kind of stepping away from that and just saying, why is this important in society? Is this important to me? Is this something I agree with, et cetera, et cetera. So I spend a little bit of time talking about that. And an example of that would be, I belong to several wine clubs, and one of the wineries had a thing on Valentine's Day. And, you go up and they have all these wonderful little appetizers and you get, et cetera, et cetera. And I was thinking, oh, I really want to go to this, but I don't have a Valentine, and so I ended up asking a friend to go, and she was my galentine.
Yay.
But then I wondered, what would it have been like if I said, what if I just went myself? And I thought about it for a moment, and I said, not so much because I wouldn't have a good time, but it's still a spectrum, and I'm still not quite exactly where I'd like to be. But I was concerned about how people would look at me like, oh, poor thing, she's here by herself, and so at other times that wouldn't bother me. But I think because it was Valentine's Day, and that's such a huge marker of identity for a lot of people in relationship, etc., I wasn't willing to take that next step. if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. But why do we have Valentine's Day and not Singles Day?
Exactly. But I sat there and I sat with that for a while and thought about it and said, okay, maybe next year I'll be a little more revolutionary. But this year I'll invite a friend, and we had a good time and the whole bit. But that's a part of this practice of decentering men, actually centering myself, is really interrogating all of these structures when I'm confronted with them. So that's one. Another is the ways, the conscious and unconscious ways that I place others' opinions above my needs and my fullness. And coming as an Enneagram 2, that's something I've been dealing with for at least a decade, not knowing I was an Enneagram 2, and so when I first started this conversation with myself, but now recognizing these tendencies on my part and actually being really, really super aware now of the structures of society that have encouraged this to be a part of my life has made me just sit. Again, I might make a choice that might not be coming from the highest part of myself, but at least sitting and having this conversation with myself. It slows down your decision making, but so sometimes I may do a knee-jerk decision and then later think about the decision that I made. But I think I'm just becoming so much more aware, like you said, of all these ways in which it's the everything's kind of stacked against me. So the ways in which I can kind of make make enlightened, educated decisions constantly, knowing what the structure is. So that's a part of it. And then the another aspect is just kind of expanding my imagination. Just this idea that instead of thinking of every choice I make as this proof that I'm a good thing or a bad thing, or that was a good choice or that was a bad choice, just recognizing that sometimes as an individual, I just am. Or usually all the time as an individual, I am. And the choices I make may reflect this, that, or the other. But what I'm doing for myself is keeping it from being a reflection of my inherent goodness or badness. So I don't know if that makes any sort of sense.
It does.
But that's a part of my quote unquote centering practice. And then just recognizing that I do so, like you said that you do, I do so much work for I'm on boards, I do audio description, I do, I teach. There's so much that I do for others, and not doing that, but also interrogating what am I getting out of it, like trying to remember the joy when I am doing something that's not necessarily centering myself. Well, myself is there, right? So how can I move myself closer to the center in whatever activity I'm doing? So what was the joy that I went into teaching? So reminding myself, even when it's the subject, it's the day I have to teach this. It's like, I kind of have to teach it, because if I don't, then the next thing, the more fun thing won't be understood. But even when I'm doing that, what's the joy for me in this? Why did I go into this? Why does it make me feel full and satisfied? I think that's a big part of that. And then there's just me time where I'm just doing the shit I want to do when I feel like doing it. So yeah.
One of the things that you said that I was thinking about is, like, you're talking about the things that you do that bring you joy, and how there's that cultural pushback on them. And I was just thinking about how obvious it is whenever you say, like, oh, I like going to the winery, but I don't want to go by myself. And then, because I've had thoughts like that. Well, why? Oh, well, I don't want to do this because it's Valentine's Day and I don't have a Valentine. Well, why?
Yes.
And for me, the reasoning is always very thin, but the emotions are very deep.
That's because of the conditioning. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That is, and where I really started diving into those emotions and figuring out what's the best thing for me is with travel.
Oh.
And because for the longest time I never traveled alone. And I would always, twist myself into knots trying to make my schedule work with somebody else's, or make my budget work with someone else's, or pay for, whatever, so that someone would I travel with others. And then I thought about, well, why? Because that's the model. When I think about it, though, the times I've traveled by myself have been fabulous, because I do what I want, when I want to, where, I can decide, okay, I'm going to, go pedal to the metal and just sightsee, 7 hours straight, and then come home and collapse. Or I'm just going to sit at this coffee shop for 5 hours and journal or whatever. And so that was when I began to realize that when I choose to travel with someone, say on the Camino or something like that, you know what I mean? It is a choice that I'm making because I want to do that thing. I want to do the Camino with you. I want to do, you know what I mean? I want to go to Spain with you, not because I need to have someone go with me. If I don't go with someone, it's, people will look at me or something like that. So I've accomplished it in travel. I have to accomplish it at the wineries. or I have to accomplish it on Valentine's Day. That's going to be my thing. I'm going to go out for, no, because it's too expensive. I was going to say I'm going to go out by myself for Valentine's Day next year, but why?
No.
And I didn't even actually like to go out for Valentine's Day with a friend. So, there we go.
I agree. I agree about that. It's just expensive and crowded. No.
It's expensive and crowded. Yeah,
exactly. For everyone. I don't care if you have a Valentine or not.
And then I'm taking up a table for the two people.
You deserve that table.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, yeah.
But I'll just go when it's less crowded and less expensive.
And they don't have like 7 seating, so the waiter's like, "Are you done yet?
Yeah.
You done yet?"
Right. Exactly.
So anyway, but
that's how I will center myself.
That's how I center myself, exactly. So yeah.
And bringing up the Camino, I experienced so much pushback on that in ways that I wasn't expecting. Like, you're going to the Camino without your partner? Is he okay with that? Are you going to be safe? Like is my partner a bodyguard? Also, we were going to Spain, which is more safe than many places in the United States. I think that it's more dangerous for me in parts of my city than it was for me to be alone
with no one for at least a mile
and no cell service.
Yes,
I was safer there than I am here. And I think it reveals that it's really not based in reality. It's based in these assumptions, expectations. Yes. Yeah. Around the structure.
Yeah. So. Woo.
Yeah.
It's so funny that you said people were asking. No one asked me those questions because by then I trained them. Like, yeah, I'm fucking going to Rome by myself. Like, why the hell would I be bringing someone else? It's like, are you going to pay to come with me?
Right?
Sure, you can carry my luggage. But no. So yeah, no. I don't think anyone asked me those questions. But probably they had in previous decades, and I've worked them through that. But I just find it interesting that in one place in my life, or in a couple of places in my life, I've done so much good work in that area, and then there's other places. It's a spectrum, right? There's other places where I still have some work to do, apparently, or at least some investigation and some thinking and experiencing to do.
I think it really shows that I can have. I can have a deep acceptance of it in some areas of my life, and in other areas it still stings.
Because we have so many structures, and I for me, I feel like I'm constantly battling all of those expectations and assumptions and structures, and the single person surcharge when you travel. It's like that kind of stuff. Yeah. So our poem is actually from the same poet that we read in our last episode 106, Rebecca Campbell.
And her book is called Your Soul Had a Dream, Your Life Is It. How to Be Held by Life When It Feels Like Everything is Falling Apart. And we just spent like an hour talking about how
exactly
when we decenter and we center ourselves, it can kind of make things fall apart.
Yes, indeed.
This is called Half One Thing, Half the Next.
I don't know who I am anymore. I'm half one thing, half the next. The only place I can find ground is within. but even that part of me feels like it's in flux.
I know I'm part of the cosmos and that the cosmos is self-organizing, but it's also beautiful chaos, and I feel more chaos than order right now.
Maybe the chaos is the chrysalis, the great mystery reorganizing itself. The more you try to make sense of it, the more random it feels.
The moment I find something that defines who I'm becoming, it slips through my fingers. The only thing left to do is to stop clinging and to let it all fall. To lay who I once was and will soon be on the altar of the great mystery, wait, and simply be, as my soul readies itself to express yet another part of my multidimensionality.
Beautiful poem. And I think a perfect stop.
Mm-hmm. That multidimensionality is, I think, at the center of centering myself.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us. We would love to hear your thoughts on your multidimensionality and what you are centering in your life. We hope you have enjoyed the magic that has unfolded here at Witchy Wit.
It would be great if you would help make Witchy Wit possible and get access to exclusive content by donating on Patreon.
We'd love it if you join our Witchy community and enjoy shareable content on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Would you do us a big favor and support us by rating and reviewing us wherever you get your podcasts? It's free and helps witchy folks find us.
Feel free to email us at witchywitpodcast@gmail.com. We love to hear from our community. Reach out and let us know what's brewing in your cauldron.
New episodes are released every second and fourth Friday. Follow us on your favorite podcasting platform so our episodes go right to your playlist. You can listen as you ride your broom.
Stay witchy, y'all!